I'm skeptical of Javier Milei, and here's why. First of all, you mean to tell me that just ahead of BRICS, this alleged anarchist politician, an anarchist in philosophy, but a minarchist, a statist in practice, swoops onto the stage, gets all this media attention, goes up there, hollers taxation is extortion a few times, calls himself an anarchist, wins, becomes the president of a not insignificant state and country. And then he gets the nod from people like Donald Trump. The IMF is like, hey, yeah, we love this guy. He's coming at it with some aggressive reforms. We're all about this. He's going to pay off this debt. Oh, yay. Anarcho-capitalism is on the global stage now. It's part of global politics. We're wheeling and dealing with the IMF. We're going to consolidate all this debt. We're going to go deep into the pocket of the IMF. Then they're going to give him they're going to give him access to $4 billion. Then there's another report that he's looking for a $15 billion loan. Talking about a $15 billion loan. They can lift the currency restrictions. Anarchists are on the global stage and they're doing politics. We're going to pay off this debt. We're going to balance the books. What kind of anarchist talks about balancing the books of the state? That's the pragmatic aspect of it, where you're going to go in there, you're going to try to play politics, and you're going to end up perpetuating the same slavery and extortion that you said you were against. And that's part of it, sure. Hopefully he proves me wrong. If you're going to do it, though, like one thing you could have done is try to at least come up with some other way to not pay the IMF, since every anarchist knows that that's a completely illegitimate organization and that money is completely fraudulent. And as far as I can tell, that program is directly working against my interests, working against the interests of the so-called citizens, all the IMF and US and WEF slave states, puppet states, their citizens, and this dollar system. He put out his program, and I guess we're just supposed to infer, he says he wanted to he wanted to reduce state spending to a historical low of 20% of the GDP, and as an anarchist in philosophy and a minarchist in practice, why not 19%? Why not 15%? Why not 10%? Why not at least, a beef I had with this was, you put out this big program, this fancy program, I guess we're just supposed to infer that you're an anarchist in philosophy, and whatever that means is we're not going to abolish the state. Now, with the eventual goal, hopefully, so all you had to do was add in with the eventual goal of being rid of the state entirely. Where he says he's going to get rid of the central bank, but I'm sure that's going to be after all of these foreign investors come in and buy these newly, quote, privatized firms and former state industries. And the IMF is going to extend this credit, and then these so-called Western corporations and all these fat cats who got rich off the political corruption in that country of the last several decades are going to buy up all these newly private industries. And in a sense, it is still better than the state owning it, because theoretically they're at least subject to supply and demand and consumer wishes. But we'll see. I'm sure it's going to be better for the common folk, for the citizenry. Market reforms are going to help, but he's too much of a friend of the IMF, and he wants to go up there and play global politics instead of talking about anarchism, instead of saying, hey, look, Jack, your whole system is corrupt. He'll say that, but then he goes and he plays with the system because, then there's all these excuses about, well, we get sanctioned by the world stage and we'd, our money would be worthless. So instead, we're going to pump in this other slave currency and take on another 15 billion of that potentially. Give all first dibs to these IMF corporations, all these dollar corporations, all these US corporations and political cronies. And hopefully I'm proven wrong, but so far all I can say is he's been doing way too much minarchy in practice and not enough anarchism in philosophy. And as far as I can tell, he's directly working against the interests of the people who want to end the Fed, and who want to end the fiat system, and want to end the slave dollar system. Here's John Perkins, author of Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
But perhaps the most common is that we will identify a country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations. But the money never actually goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our big corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country, power plants, industrial parks, ports, things that benefit a few rich people in that country, in addition to our corporations. but really don't help the majority of the people at all. However, those people, the whole country is left holding a huge debt. It's such a big debt they can't repay it, and that's part of the plan, that they can't repay it. And so at some point, we economic hitmen go back to them and say, listen, you lost a lot of money, can't pay your debt, so sell your oil real cheap to our oil companies. Allow us to build a military base in your country, or send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world like Iraq, or vote with us on the next UN vote, to have their electric utility company privatized and their water and sewage system privatized and sold to U.S. corporations or other multinational corporations. So there was that whole mushrooming thing, and it's so typical of the way the IMF and the World Bank work, that you put a country in debt, it's such a big debt it can't pay it, and then you offer to refinance that debt and pay even more interest. And you demand this quid pro quo, which you call a conditionality or good governance, which means basically that they've got to sell off their resources, including many of their social services, their utility companies, their school systems sometimes, their penal systems,